After 15 seasons in the NBA, LaMarcus Aldridge has officially retired from playing basketball professionally. After over 1,000 games, as former 7-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA teams, LaMarcus Aldridge has retired from the game due to an irregular heartbeat. He's been dealing with that for his whole career. I think he said so. This has been a condition that he's always had, and he also said after his last game playing in the NBA was against the Los Angeles Lakers for the Brooklyn Nets on April 10th, 2021. He said that it never felt this bad, the irregular heartbeat. So he made the right decision. He put his family first, and he made loads of money. One of the greatest Blazers of all time. So he had a very, very good career. I'll get into that career in this video, but he made the right decision. If it's so bad that you could risk your life, you need to retire. LaMarcus Aldridge, he's had a great career, but a very unlucky career, a very unfortunate one looking back. He's been on very good teams in Portland, where injuries prevented them from going really far, they never made a Western Finals. Injuries at the wrong time prevented that. He joined the San Antonio Spurs, with Tim Duncan on his last legs. Kawhi Leonard was taking over that team, but he was, getting unhappy each and every year. So he joined the San Antonio Spurs at the wrong time. And Brooklyn, he joined a super team there with James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. Also had Blake Griffin on that squad. DeAndre Jordan, a former All-Star as well. But due to the irregular heartbeat, he had to call it quits on there. But I don't think that championship in Brooklyn, if he was to win it, would have changed his legacy that much, because he'd only be a role player with Brooklyn. But let's get into his career from the start to the finish. And his career started in the 2006 NBA draft, where LaMarcus Aldridge was drafted number 2 overall by the Chicago Bulls. But he was traded for the 4th pick, who would end up being Tyrese Thomas and Victor Kypra. Probably said their names wrong, because they didn't have great NBA careers. And the Chicago Bulls would definitely regret this trade happening. LaMarcus Aldridge, what he went on to be compared to these two people, was not worth it for them, I don't think. And it was a great deal for Portland. The Blazers also got shooting guard Brandon Roy at number 6 overall in that same draft. So now they had a very good front court piece in LaMarcus Aldridge, mainly a power forward, and now you had a shooting guard in Brandon Roy. And in LaMarcus Aldridge's rookie season, he didn't start a whole lot of games because they did have a power forward in his position, but they ended up moving him on after that season. But in LaMarcus Aldridge's rookie season, he averaged 9 points per game, 1.2 blocks, 5 rebounds, and 50% shooting from the field in 22 minutes. So as a rookie season, pretty solid, showing that he's got potential, and I think he fulfilled it. In 2007, the Blazers had the number 1 overall pick, and they drafted center Greg Oden. And now the Blazers had a good young tree, a big tree, you could almost say. So going into 2007 8 NBA season, the Portland Trail Blazers had a very promising young tree, as I said. They had the number 1 pick, Greg Oden. They had the 2007 NBA Rookie of the Year in Brandon Roy, and a very promising LaMarcus Aldridge. And this young core could have been something special in Portland, with their front court being LaMarcus Aldridge as power forward, and you'd Greg Oden as your center, you'd shooting guard and Brandon Roy. This team had lots of potential, but injuries would ruin this big tree. Well, this young tree. Oden was injured from the get-go, and he'd only ever play 82 games for the Portland Trail Blazers. Brandon Roy, he began to get injuries shortly after the Greg Oden injuries, around the 2010s. And while all this was happening, LaMarcus Aldridge was quietly improving on his game, becoming very dangerous with his baseline jumper, from the mid-range. He became the number 1 option. He started off probably as a number 3 option with Greg Oden and Brandon Roy ahead of him. He probably became the number 1 option in his Portland Trail Blazers team, which is bittersweet for him, because he could have been part of a very successful team in Portland if all went to plan, but things didn't. So, even though he didn't have the success as a team, personally he did very, very well and improved his game massively. In 2012 now, he was clearly the main man at this stage in Portland, but the Blazers drafted Damian Lillard, and Lillard would go on to be Rookie of the Year that season, but Aldridge, he was balling out too. The arrival of Damian Lillard didn't affect him. He would go on to make 5 straight All-Star appearances from 2012 to 2017, and in 2011-12 season, Aldridge, he averaged 22 points per game, 1.2 blocks, 1 steal, 8.8 rebounds a game, 2 assists, on 50% shooting from the field in 40 minutes. So compared to his rookie season, you can see the improvement, massive improvement. So, which is good for him, and at this stage, all was looking well in Portland. You had a promising young point guard, Damian Lillard. You had a very promising power forward, at the time anyway, in LaMarcus Aldridge. Things were looking up. And the Blazers began to build a very good team down in Portland, with Lillard As your second point guard, you had Wes Matthews. Very good. This is prime Wes Matthews almost probably. If you're a Lakers fan, you know right now he isn't balling out as well as he could. So you had Wes Matthews at the shooting guard. Nick Batum, also in that team, small forward. LaMarcus Aldridge as your power forward. And Robin Lopez as your starting centre. A very good team. All could play defence except for Dame Lillard. You know, great scorers in that team. And this Blazers team is looking very, very good. Now, 2014, the Portland Trail Blazers finished 5th in the Western Conference with a 54-28 record, very good, with LA averaging 23 points per game, 11 boards and 1 block. The Blazers beat Houston in the first round of the 2014 NBA playoffs, so they advanced to the second round but lost to the San Antonio Spurs. And this was the furthest LaMarcus would ever get in Portland. The second round in the Western Conference, very tough Western Conference, got some great teams in there. But yeah, they lost to the Spurs in the second round in 2014. 2015 now, and injuries halted any progress for the Portland Trail Blazers, with Wes Matthews rupturing his Achilles tendon and LaMarcus Aldridge battling a thumb injury the whole way through. The Blazers limped over the line into the playoffs, and they'd be beaten by the Grizzlies in the first round. And that kind of ended, that was it for LaMarcus in Portland. Because now we're going into the 2015 NBA offseason. Free agent LaMarcus Aldridge, you know, he's the main man for 1 week in the 2015 NBA offseason. Everyone's looking at where LaMarcus Aldridge would end up. Laker fans, I remember this Laker fan, he'd already had the Aldridge jersey on him, you know, thinking he was a Laker. Obviously Blazers fans would love to keep him, and they were waiting to see would he resign all season. And with Portland, you know, he didn't really like Damian Lillard because he's becoming more of the main man. People were looking towards him more, so he decided to move on, and he chose to sign with the San Antonio Spurs and bring an end to his 9 years in Portland. And the furthest he ever got in the playoffs, as I said, with the Blazers was the second round in 2014. And in that playoff series, he actually averaged 26.2 points per game, 1.6 blocks, 10.6 boards, and 45% shooting from the field. So LaMarcus Aldridge, he showed in this series he could do it in the playoffs. He clearly showed in the regular season he can do it, becoming a multiple-time All-Star. So he decided to move on to a great franchise in San Antonio with some great players, great organisation, Coach Pop. You know, he thought this was the best place for him to succeed. And LaMarcus Aldridge, joining San Antonio in the twilight of Tim Duncan's career and Tony Parker's career also, both come near the end. But they also had a fast improving Kawhi Leonard on their hands, who was on the Spurs team going into the 2015-16 season. So there's a very good Spurs team now that he joined, but Tim Duncan and Tony Parker were on the ropes really. Their career was coming towards an end. And Aldridge, he was brought in to replace Tim Duncan really. They played alongside Tim Duncan for that one season they were together, but Tim Duncan was going to retire after the 2015-16 season anyway. So Aldridge, he struggled to adapt to Coach Pop's system in his first couple of seasons. In his first season, he averaged 18 points per game, 1.1 blocks, 8.5 boards, and 51% shooting from the field. So most of his stats are down. But the Spurs as a team, they finished second in the Western Conference with a 67-15 record, only behind the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. So even though LaMarcus Aldridge personally didn't have the best of seasons, the San Antonio Spurs team were playing very well, even though they had some older players, and Kawhi Leonard was still improving. 2016 playoffs though, the Spurs lost in 6 to the KD and Westbrook Thunder. LaMarcus Aldridge in that playoff series run even, he averaged 22 points per game, 8.3 boards, 1.4 blocks, and 52% shooting from the field. So you know, he improved in the playoffs, he showed he could do it in the playoffs. So let's move on to 2016-17 season. With Tim Duncan retired, Kawhi was the main man in this team now. This is Kawhi Leonard's team, and Aldridge will be the number 2 guy. Coach Pop tried to get Aldridge to shoot more threes in 2016-17 season. Aldridge attempted 0.8 threes a game, which is up from past years, and he hit those threes on 41% shooting from 3. So you know, he improved, but like, he's more in the mid-range game. That's what he made his name from, so it was hard for him to get away from that. The Spurs in the 16-17 season once again finished second behind the Warriors. The Spurs made the Western Conference Finals this time, getting swept by the Warriors this time only because Kawhi Leonard got injured in Game 1. Game 1, Spurs and Warriors, 2017 Western Conference Finals. Kawhi Leonard got injured and he ended up missing the whole series, and the Spurs only lost by 2 points in that first game. So they show they can really give, you know, this Warriors team a game. But, you know, it was meant to be clearly. Kawhi got injured, they ended up getting swept, and they were out of there. And Aldridge didn't have the best of playoffs either, only averaging 16.5 points per game and 7.4 boards on 45% shooting from the field. Now, the 2017 offseason right here. LaMarcus Aldridge signs a 3-year, $72 million deal extension with the San Antonio Spurs. So he's locking in for the rest of his prime, and then going into his mid-30s. And the 2017-18 season was a tough one for the Spurs, very tough for them. Kawhi Leonard had injury problems all the way in from the Western Conference Finals, and he wanted out after a while. He became unhappy with the organisation, and he only ended up playing 9 games that season. So Kawhi Leonard wasn't really there. But LaMarcus Aldridge, he led the Spurs to the playoffs, so it's pretty impressive, because without Kawhi Leonard, without Tim Duncan, he was retired by this stage. LaMarcus Aldridge was once again the main man of this team. His stats went up again, just like in Portland when Greg Oden and Brandon Roy got injured. His stats went up, averaging 23 points per game, 8.5 boards, on 30% shooting from 3, on 1.2 trees a game now, so he's getting even more trees. And he led the Spurs to the 7th seed, where they would end up with a 47-35 record. 2018 playoffs, the Spurs lost in 5 to the Warriors, which was expected, but with the Warriors having KD, Steph, Clay, Dre, and LaMarcus Aldridge, he can hold his head high. He played well in that series, averaging over 23 points per game. So that season, 17-18, a rough one for the Spurs, but personally, LaMarcus Aldridge got his career back on track. The number one option, fitting in better with Pop's offense and schemes. So personally, he did well. The San Antonio Spurs were declining as a team. The 2018 offseason, Kawhi was traded for DeMar DeRozan, and the Spurs had 2 of the best mid-range players in the league, but the league, unfortunately, was becoming a 3-point shooting league. So you had DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, who loved hitting the 3, different era, wrong era probably. The DeMar and Aldridge pairing was very odd from the start, you could say, but they did make the playoffs in their first season together as the 7th seed once again, losing to the Denver Nuggets in 7. This will be LaMarcus Aldridge's last playoff series in his career, as they missed out in the playoffs for the first time in 20 plus years in the San Antonio Spurs organisation in the 1920 season. He averaged 20 points per game and 9.6 boards in his final playoff series against the Denver Nuggets, where, as I said, he lost in 7. So that would end his playoff career, but in the 2020-2021 season, LaMarcus Aldridge, he only played 21 games for the Spurs in the 2021 season due to injuries, and then he agreed to a buyout, earlier this year. He still averaged 14 points per game, 1 block, on 36% shooting from 3, on 3.6 trees a game. So you can see more and more trees he's taken, even near the end, and that's what he's relying on more. He got sapped of his athleticism near the end, became very immobile, but still had his mid-range shooting, still had his 3-point shooting, which is pretty good at that, and a pretty big body as well, having the paint. And on the 27th of March 2021, LaMarcus Aldridge agreed a deal with the Brooklyn Nets till the end of the season on a veteran minimum, after getting bought out by the San Antonio Spurs. This will be LaMarcus's best chance to win a championship, albeit now only a role player on a Brooklyn Nets super team. And this is why I think, even though he's not going to be part of this Nets championship run, if they do end up winning it, it won't affect his legacy that much, because he's only going to be a role player in this team anyway. Maybe not even a starting centre. He started a good few games for them, but no guarantees he would have started in the playoffs. He only played 5 games for Brooklyn, his last game being against the Lakers on April 10th, and on April 15th he announced his retirement. And I'm, as a Laker fan myself, going back to the Lakers this season, they played the San Antonio Spurs, and LaMarcus Aldridge probably his best game as a Spur this season against the Lakers, and this season as a net against the Lakers. I watched his last game. I remember seeing Drummond at the time. I was like, Drummond is dominating this guy. Obviously didn't know about his heart condition, so he called it a day after that, which is great, as I said, putting his family first. So overall, LaMarcus Aldridge, I think he's one of the most unluckiest players in the league. Joining the San Antonio Spurs a few years too late, I think. If he joined 2 or 3 years earlier even, I think he could have got a championship out of that team. Leaving a very good Blazers team who couldn't get over the line due to injuries at the wrong time to the wrong people. And in Brooklyn, only got to play 5 games on a super team before he had to call it a day. Over his career, he averaged 19.4 points per game, 8.2 boards, on 49% shooting from the field, and in over 1,000 games. He was slowing down near the end, as I said, in San Antonio, but he still showed he had the ability to turn back the clock. He got his career high in scoring in the 2018-19 season, scoring 56 points versus the OKC Thunder. So he showed he still had the ability to turn back the clock. He still had it in him. He's one of the greatest Blazers of all time. Damian Lillard has already called for his jersey to be retired at number 12. I agree with him. I think, in Portland he'll be remembered best probably. San Antonio, unfortunately, he's just, as I said, he was getting on a bit, and he just joined a bit too late. But Portland was his best years, I think. Great career. Wish him all the best. Even though you know, he's had some. As a Laker fan, I'd love to see him join the Lakers in 2015 free agency. Nothing against the guy. Wish him all the best. And he had a great career. A power forward for most of his career. Became a centre near the end. Whatever you want to call him. I think one of the best mid-range. A very unblockable shot, by the way. Very good mid-range shot he had on him. But anyway, guys, that's the video. Thanks for watching. This is episode 2, really. Of, you know, we're doing these player profile things now. We got Chris Paul, episode 1. If you want to check that one out. Now we got LaMarcus Aldridge. If you got any player you want me to go over their career, leave them in the comments below. But thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and turn on notifications, because when you have a video come out, stay notified. And as always, thanks for watching. And with all that said, I'm out of here.